excited to have Marcella here presenting a session on 4 hacks how to fill your sales funnel with high quality leads from search. We were just chatting with Marcella pre-webinar, and she has been around in digital marketing for the last 2 decades, pretty much since the day she went to the college. So she has some exciting best practices to share with you today. But before we dive into the presentation, I also want to mention that for those of you who missed previous sessions, I saw that a few people did, you can always go back and check the schedule by clicking on the top of your screen. You can see the Crowdcast schedule, and you can review all of the sessions. You can also watch them until the end of this week, but afterwards you will need to get all access pass to watch all of the sessions on demand. So big shout out to SEM Rush as our partner who helped us promote this event. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to you, Marcella. Please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Cecile. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of this event. So I did want to share a little story before we get started. Vasile said, share something fun about yourself. So when I started, it really was a long, long time ago, almost 2 decades ago when I started digital marketing. And it was my first summer off in between freshman and sophomore year in college. And I looked at the newspaper and there was an ad for a customer service company to do customer service. So I went and I answered the ad and I was hired. And they said, you're just going to have to answer phones. What they failed to mention is that I had to answer the phone for people asking for their Viagra. It was an internet company who was selling Viagra back in 1999, and my job back then was to do the customer service for that. So I had a lot of fun, but then I asked, well, how did these guys buy this Viagra online, and started learning. And 20 years later, here I am talking about how to fill your sales funnel with quality leads from search. So I want to start by talking about how much things have changed. When I started doing online marketing, people would go, at that point it wasn't even Google, but in the last few years, people would go to Google and they would search for what they needed, and they would quite likely click through and purchase. But now there's so much competition. There's so many different brands offering the same products that people have a lot of different choices. So the buyer's journey today is very different. People may start by thinking, oh, I need this. And then they go to Google and they start performing a lot of different searches to figure out exactly what it is they want. And then they'll compare different brands and pricing. And at the end, they might even move away from their mobile or tablet to their computer to make a purchase. So this is super important because many of us who have been doing marketing for a really long time are used to thinking in terms of search, click, buy, but it's different now. So what I want to bring forth today is a change of premise. We need to move away from the concept of search engine optimization and instead start thinking about how to do audience optimization. And what I mean is really truly understanding our audience and what they need, what their pain points are, and using that information to maximize Google search. So let's think about our customers. Many of us are so focused on the tactics that we need to apply. What keywords do we need? How many links do we need to get? What was the latest, algorithm update, that we forget about truly understanding our audience. And the thing is that all of you, whether you're an agency, whether you're a brand, whether you're an in-house marketing team, whoever you are, you're going to have different types of customers. And each one of your different customers is going to have a different buying journey. So at awareness, they're just getting familiar. They're looking for something. They don't quite know what it is they need. At consideration, they're doing a lot more in-depth research. They're comparing products, they're comparing brands, they're learning more about what it is they need to solve a pain point. And at decision, they're ready to buy. So they're maybe just searching for reviews for the brand that they chose, or maybe they're just price comparison. And you need to understand for each of your customers how it is that they move from awareness to consideration to decision. So I want to bring forth the idea of persona research. I know many of you are aware of this, but few people really spend the time to do this. So I have here three different potential personas. This is for a real estate agent as a target. So if for a real estate agent, maybe they'll have three personas. They'll have a small family, they'll have millennials, a single woman who's retired, and what they search for and their pain points are going to be significantly different. The small family might be very focused on the education, the schools, the activities, but the millennials may be more interested in like great restaurants or investment opportunities, whereas a single woman might be looking for charities to get involved with. So why this matters is because this is all connected to the search journey in Google, right? It's connected to the keywords that they search for. So for the small family who's looking to move, they might start by researching for the best schools in a specific city, or they might be looking for the best ballet studio. If you're a realtor, most of the realtors that I talk to, they're trying to optimize for like buy homes in city or best realtor in city, but they forget that people are already researching much before that at the top of the funnel at awareness. So they'll be looking for the best school in such and such an area or the best ballet studio. So these are opportunities for you to capture that before they even get to the bottom of the funnel, because at that point they probably already have a realtor that they've met along the way. So it's really important for all of you guys to really understand this, because this is going to shape how you create your Google SEO strategy. This should be a part of your keyword strategy, your outreach strategy, and much, much more. So now let's move on to our first hack, which is how to create an editorial strategy that optimizes the customer journey. So we already know that we have different personas who go through different stages. And now we need to figure out how to find the keywords that belong to each persona at each buying stage. So in this slide, you can see a really simple way to kind of visualize all of it together. So you have three personas: startup, entrepreneur, manager. You have your three buying stages: awareness, consideration, decision. And then you have a little note at the bottom of the journey. What are they looking for? What is their pain point? In this example, I'm looking for people that are trying to find a better project management system. So at awareness, they might be looking for just very generic information. They know they need a new tool, or they're looking into agile, sprint planning, or they might be looking for templates. And you can see that we have the photo of different personas, so that we can make sure that we have keywords and content for each persona at each buying stage. And when we move on to consideration, these are more specific. They have a better idea of what they need. Now they're just researching their options. And at decision, they're comparing products and they're looking for pricing. So here you can see this is an entire buyer's journey that's filled with keywords that we're going to use in Google SEO for each persona. So next, I think it's really important to point out another very big change that's been happening over the last couple of years is how many touch points it takes to deliver a qualified sales lead. It used to be that people would just search, find something they needed, and buy. But now it might take up to 7 to 13 touch points for people to purchase or to get a lead. So in that journey, they're going to do a lot of different searches. They're going to try and find different answers. And the key is that you want to be found when they're doing the research for the whole buyer's journey. You want to be there at awareness, at consideration, and most importantly, at decision. And to do that, you can't just think about like these keywords that you're optimizing for. You have to think about the different types of content that you can optimize for to reach them. So here's an example of doing this with the premise of a hub and spoke approach with content pillars. So a content pillar might be a key hero piece that answers a lot of questions, or it addresses the pain points of a persona. And ideally, these are going to be very comprehensive pieces with over 5,000 words of text that answer almost everything the persona could think of to search for. You can take that content pillar and you can break it up into dozens of different types of content, whether they're webinars, infographics, blog posts, videos. But the key here is you take the theme, the premise of a content pillar, and you break it up into awareness content, decision content, consideration content, infographics, and then you put that out everywhere so that you can show up at every stage of the buyer's journey, no matter what channel they're using to search, and no matter whether they like learning using videos, whether they prefer to read, maybe they want a webinar. You need to be there. So the idea is think of like the buyer's journey as a ship with a lot of holes. You want to plug all the holes so that you show up wherever they're searching. And then you take all that information and you put it into an editorial calendar. And the key when you're building your editorial calendar is that you want to include all of this information, your persona, your themes, your buying stages, so that when you're creating all the content, you know that you're addressing everything you need. Now let's move on to the second hack. So we know that we need to create a lot of content, and the content has to be based on our buying stages. But now let's move on to our featured snippets, right? Because these are a great opportunity that have arisen in the last year or so when it comes to SEO. Featured snippets are awesome because they're essentially position 0. They show up above your organic results. So here's an example of one. If someone's typing like, how does Bitcoin work? And notice how much real estate this takes in the search engine results page. Notice how visually appealing it is. There's a lot of text, there's some blue, it's big, it sticks out, there's an image. So these are what I think is the holy grail of SEO, because it puts you above all the organic results. These are highly, highly desirable. So when we're talking about SEO, I don't think there's a better opportunity right now than featured snippet optimization. I think this is just key. So we partnered at SEMrush with Gergich and Company, and we did a very vast study. We looked at 6.9 million featured snippets, and we analyzed 80 million keywords to come up with some data to understand what it takes to rank in featured snippets. What we found is that questions, prepositions, and comparisons are the types of keywords that trigger featured snippets. So if you look at the chart, 41% of questions in Google have a featured snippet. So like if you ask a question to Google, almost 1 out of 2 of the results is going to have a featured snippet. And we did see a 480% increase in these. And in terms of prepositions, we have 17%, and comparisons, there's 22%. So when you're doing keyword research and you're thinking about what keywords to use for featured snippets, these are the 3 that you really want to focus on: questions, prepositions, and comparisons. Once you're trying to optimize, particularly for a paragraph featured snippet, I get asked this question all the time. Well, how much content do I write? How do I format my page to be able to own that featured snippet? The most important thing to consider when it comes to paragraph snippets is to write short 40 to 6 word answers in a paragraph. So if the question is, how many companies in Canada, you want to write an answer that's about 43 words long and that answers the question. And then you also want to make sure you use your keyword, which is your question, in your H1, in anchor text, and ideally also in a list. Here are some of the types of questions that you want to think about when you're looking for your keywords. You want to look for questions that include, why or will or does or can or should, and most importantly, how. And what's a little different about these is that if you're optimizing for a how question, you want to include a list. This is a bullet point list or a numbered list. And what happens often is Google will use your list, whether it's unordered or ordered, in the actual results. When you're trying to figure out the keywords that you want to use, at SEMrush, we have a great tool that you can use. It's called Keyword Magic. And what it allows you to do is you can filter by questions, as you can see in the top left. And you can also filter by the keywords that already have a featured snippet, as you can see in the bottom right. And this will give you a list of keywords that already have a featured snippet. So you don't have to try and guess, or manually search. You literally can output a list of keywords that already have featured snippet that you can go after. You can also identify the featured snippets that your competitors have. So simply go into SEMrush and type in your competitor's URL into domain analytics, and then you click on the featured snippet in the report, and this will give you the keywords that they're ranking for. So this is a great opportunity to take away, to optimize for and take away some of your competitors' featured snippets so you can actually get above them. And finally, since we're talking about the funnel, I did want to point out that your comparison keywords are phenomenal for bottom of the funnel traffic. So when you're creating content, when you're optimizing for specific keywords, make sure you include tables and comparison content about the different, different pricing options that your users may have. And Google will grab these comparison tables and add them in as featured snippets. So let's go on to our third hack, which is to optimize for your low-hanging fruit. Now, in my 20-year career, I get a lot of people that come to me and they're like, oh, I want to rank for this or I want to rank for that. And what people forget is that they might already have a lot of stuff that's it's primed for success. They're doing well, and all they need to do is a little bit of work to make it better. So instead of doing the hard lift of getting a keyword that's ranking 57 to the top 10, why not take a keyword that's ranking number 12 and put it in the top 10, or something that's number 7 and put it in the top 3? So coming back around to featured snippets, in our study we found that the organic results that are in the top 5 are usually what Google picks for a featured snippet. You can get a snippet if you're in the 6 to 20 range, but most of them come from the top 5. So if you have an organic result, you have a keyword that's ranking in the top 5, but you don't own the featured snippet, that's an opportunity for you to get into the featured snippet. So this is low-hanging fruit, right? You take what we talked about earlier, you optimize that page by adding a question, adding the paragraph, adding the formatting, and then you have an opportunity to own that featured snippet. Another opportunity is all the keywords that you have that you're in positions 5 to 15. So what you can do in SEMrush, you can look at your site, you look for your positions, and then you can filter by keywords that you have that are in, ranking less than 15, and then you sort it by volume. And those are the keywords that you want to focus on. That becomes your list of target keywords to prioritize when it comes to content creation and when it comes to outreach and link building. Another opportunity is to optimize pages that have high impressions in Google Search Console, but they have low CTR. So these are keywords that show up when they're in the, maybe they're in the top 10, but people don't click on them. So it's a great opportunity. You're already ranking, you already have visitors, you have impressions. All you need to do is improve your title and your description, which is what Google shows in the SERPs, so that you can improve the CTR, so you can get people to click. So in Google Search Console, you can look for these and sort by CTR. In SEMrush, there's a tool called Organic Traffic Insights, where you can also grab this data and sort by impressions and filter by CTR, and then you can start taking those pages and optimizing them for the target keywords. And finally, you want to use Google Search Console data to optimize your top performing pages. So go into Search Console and grab your top 20 pages, and then they will give you keywords that that they believe are relevant to that page. And you can also add other keywords just by doing keyword research. And you take those keywords and you take your top pages and enhance them. Add more content, add H1s, add H2s, and maybe add anchor links on the right. So essentially use what you have at your disposal, which is interlinks, content creation, and enhance those pages so that you can take your top 10 most authoritative pages and get them to rank for more terms. And there's something called featured snippets hubs, which are pages that rank for hundreds or thousands of featured snippets. We want to try and get our top pages to become featured snippet hubs, and we want to try and get our top pages to earn as many rankings as possible. And we can do that by enhancing and optimizing our existing authoritative pages. And let's go to our fourth and final hack, which is to speed up your website. Now, I bring this up because a lot of people know that speed is important, but they don't really spend enough time focusing on this. I hear this literally every single day. Like, oh, I told my developer to make it faster, but they said they can't. And that's a mistake. Um, this is a GIF. I love this GIF because it embodies what I think SEO is, which is you see that the car comes in and then you have 10 people working in perfect synergy to get him in and out. This is how our website should load. There's a lot of stuff going on and it should load really, really quickly. Most people say, oh no, my site, it's pretty fast or it's fast enough, but it cannot end there. You have to make your site faster because this is one of Google's primary focuses. They believe that speed is essential, mostly because the web is becoming entirely mobile. And a lot of people, we don't relate to that often in the first world, but in the third world, people are on 2G speeds, so your sites need to load very, very quickly. In a study published by Google on Think with Google, they shared that 53% of visits are abandoned if a mobile site takes longer than 3 seconds to load. So if I had all of you guys in a room and I asked how many of you guys have sites that load in less than 3 seconds, I don't think we'd have that many hands up because it's pretty hard to get a site loading in less than 3 seconds. But if you don't, 1 out of 2 visitors will leave. So it's super important to achieve this. It needs to become a priority in your SEO strategy. It needs to be something that you're spending a lot of time, effort, and energy into. So here's an example of a site that I saw. They worked on their speed and they went from 8 seconds to 2.5 seconds. And here was their organic lift. Absolutely incredible. They went from under 5,000 visitors to 50,000 simply by improving their speed. And if you guys just randomly search for sites on SEMrush, you will find if you see sites that are really fast, you'll see this because speed is a huge portion of the algorithm right now. Page speed insights. I know that a lot of people don't think that it's entirely viable to get 100 optimization score, but it is possible. Here's an example of a site called Healthline, and these guys own hundreds of thousands of featured snippets. And if you look across the board, most of their pages have an optimization score of 99, and their speed is very, very fast. Now, hardcore SEOs believe that this score is too simplistic, right? It's almost like the old days of PageRank where you can't give your links a score from 0 to 10. But we can use this as a point of reference. And if you have developers that you're working with, this is something that you can use and tell them, you know what, I want to get my optimization score as close to 100 as possible, and my page speed needs to be fast in both mobile and desktop. And a way to do this, one of the quick and easy wins to be able to do this is to enable caching on your server and to use asynchronous loading. So a lot of people still use synchronous loading, which means that all the code has to load one after the other. But if you use asynchronous loading, you can have multiple things happening at once so that your above the fold content, which is what's most important, can show up quickly. Now, when it comes to speed, there's a lot of newer measurements that we're using, such as time to first byte, time to first meaningful paint. And these are ways that you can benchmark how your site is performing at each of these levels. So time to first byte is how quickly Google shows a little bit of content. And time to first meaningful paint is how quickly people can actually make sense of your page. So you want to have these to be as fast as you can, and you can use these as points of reference when you're optimizing your site. So those are my 4 hacks. There's much more that I could talk about, but I wanted to keep it brief, keep it simple, tell you 4 things that I found will have the most impact when you're optimizing your site. And if you do these 4 things, if you use question keywords optimize them for featured snippets, if you improve your site speed, and and that's about it, then I think I can guarantee that you're going to see more traffic from Google search, and you're going to start filling your funnel with people at every stage, at awareness, consideration, and decision. Thank you guys so much. And if you guys have any questions, now's the time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marcella. It was great. Really appreciate you giving this presentation today. And thanks everybody for joining. So we have time for a few questions while the next speaker is getting ready. So let's see what we got here. By the way, for those of you, Marcella, would you like to share your PowerPoint deck? I saw we had a few questions.
Happy to. Yeah, well, we can send it out after.
Okay, excellent. So let's see here. There are some very specific questions related to the presentations and some very general one. So why don't we try with tools? I know you talk about SEMrush quite a bit. Can you also share, and for those of you who might have missed a presentation that we have earlier today, Neil Patel is sharing his 7 growth marketing tools. I'm curious, what else is in your toolbox besides SEMrush? What other tools are you using?
Well, okay. I used to use a lot of tools, and that was a passion of mine. If you look through, I mean, I've written a lot of content on different tools to use. And I will preface this by saying that I've only been at SEMrush a few months, and I was hired because I love this tool so much. But the truth of the matter is I kind of stopped using a lot of other tools because I could get most of the data that I needed in SEMrush without having to pay for 10, 20 different subscriptions. So I know that's probably not the answer given that I work with SEMrush, but like I said, I only started a few months ago, and before then, I had about 20 different tools to achieve what I can now achieve with just the one. So, I mean, the only other tool right now that I still use is BuzzSumo, which helps me when it comes to creating the titles. So I use SEMrush to come up with the keywords that I need, and then I take those keywords and I put them in BuzzSumo to help me just come up with ideas of titles that have a lot of social shares and social engagement. That just helps me in the editorial process and in the creative, coming up with the titles and finding topics that people will resonate with. But generally, almost everything that I need when it comes to keyword research, featured snippets, competitive analysis, everything I can get just in SEMrush.
Got it. Great to know. Yeah, if you haven't checked out the tool, definitely do. We are also using the SEMrush at the Growth Marketing Conference as well. There are quite a few questions coming up about the speed of the website and how you can increase it. Maybe you can dive a little bit deeper into it. Any WordPress plugins that you might recommend?
First thing I'll say is the problem with WordPress plugins is a lot of them will actually slow down your site. So I used to have a dozen plugins that I used to love, but now I only have usually maybe 3 or 4 of the most important plugins that I need, because whenever you use a plugin, you're introducing a foreign element that could actually slow down your site. So the focus right now is lean and mean. So try and figure out what is the least amount of code and plugins that you can use to present a good user experience for your audience. So I use Amazon as a host. I use the one plugin that I use for images is called Kraken.io, and that will take the images and make them significantly smaller while preserving quality. And I use, like I said, asynchronous loading, and mainly the goal is to find a WordPress theme that's really, really, really lean, so it doesn't have a lot of bloated code, so that you just have the most important code that's loading, and the priority is what shows up above the fold. That has to be your most important thing, and that has to load really, really fast. But in terms of tools and plugins, I think Kraken is one that I highly recommend. I highly recommend spending the money on the best possible server or host you can find, because it will definitely be worth it. I tried a lot of different ones, and I ended up on Amazon because I can add resources to it and make my servers just respond in 2 seconds. So almost any site that I work with is going to load in less than 3 seconds. And a big part of that has to do with Amazon, and the code has to be really, really clean. So I used to just go to, find any kind of WordPress theme that I loved and work with that. But now I really look for themes that are fast and don't have a lot of bloated code. And that should address a lot of the issues that people have.
Very cool. Thank you so much for that insight.
Of course.
Looks like we have time for just one more question. So I would like you to actually choose one that you prefer to answer. We have about 9 of them. And for everybody else who are not able to ask the question, you have the Marcella's presentation here.
Guys, and feel free to tweet me, add me on LinkedIn, email me, call me if you want to talk about it. That's why I have this up. I'm happy to, I love this stuff. I love talking about it. So just follow up with me in any way, shape, form, or capacity. There's a lot of information. I know I gave a lot, and I actually had to delete half of my presentation because it would take too long. There's so much I want to talk about, but you can follow up with me afterwards, and I'm happy to help. But let's just pick one more, Vasil, because I can't see the question. So just.
Oh, you cannot see them. Okay, sorry. So let's see. Okay, what tools have you? Okay, can we get a special discount? What data points or tools do you use for the persona building? I guess the answer would be SEMrush.
No, actually, that's one thing that I cannot. We don't have persona building with SEMrush. HubSpot has a good persona builder. What I ultimately use is Google Analytics, because in Google Analytics, you can create a whole bunch of segments to try and understand who your personas are. So I go into Analytics and I start creating segments, right? And there's a lot of pre-made segments that you can use that are preset in Analytics, but you can also create your own. So I go in there and I start, breaking up the data. 25 to 35-year-olds, 35 to 45-year-olds, male versus female. And by coming up with all these segments, you can start getting an idea of who your personas are and breaking them out into groups. And the other easiest way to do this is with customer service. When people call, as you're talking to people, as you're getting to know your audience, just ask them, who are you? Just get as much information as possible from people when they call in. And I know that's not strategic and data driven, but it's what we have right now. But I believe that 2019 is going to see a lot of growth in audience building tools, because that's the future. Google's spending a lot of time trying to understand buyers' intent, and we're going to see the conversation shifting in the next year or two away from keywords and more towards intent and needs and the audience optimization that I talked about in the beginning.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Marcella, for joining us today. It was excellent, and looking forward to meeting you in person at some point. We talked about doing a workshop here in San Francisco eventually.
Good.
And yeah, thanks everyone for joining this session.
Coming. Look forward to getting to connect. Bye.
We're gonna take a little short break before we bring our next speaker in. And afterwards, we will be calling everyone into the next session with a Q&A with Nirayal. See you guys soon.
Thank you. Bye.